Hey everybody, what up? All right, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 2022 developer survey and Stack Overflow, just give my thoughts on it as we go through this together. I think it's a pretty good gauge. Probably not, well, it's probably one of the better gauges, I guess, out there. I mean, Stack Overflow is still the number one question answer website. I think GitHub is really um, eaten into their market share when it comes to actually how to do something. A lot of answers I'll find on either Stack Overflow or GitHub, but those are still two of the biggest ones. But let's go through these results here and just I'll give my thoughts here. Number one is education. So this is something that I've always said you probably should go to school. Actually, I say build projects if you're going to become a developer, but it seems like in this day and age with the market kind of shrinking up a little bit, it's much more difficult to get in if you don't have a degree and you don't have projects out there that are going to really impress somebody, and you don't have years worth of experience probably coding on the side. It took me 3 years to get my first job. And I was coding every single day, and I was trying to be an entrepreneur and do all kinds of different things. But eventually I got in, and it's a great opportunity. I've made millions doing it, I think, somewhere around that. But anyway, when we look at this here, it's a little bit concerning here because you're looking at 63% roughly of respondents have either a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So, and then when you look at other even more higher degrees than that, like PhDs and such, your market share, then you're looking at basically a 25% opportunity to try to get in. And then if we take away the associate's degree, which I don't even have that, I went to school for business and dropped out, that is even worse. So you're looking at basically 20% of the market, 22% without a college degree, right? Maybe 25%. Yeah, 25%. So either way, what we're trying to do on this, all the YouTubers are, do this, do that, become a programmer, all that. You're competing with 25% of the entire world that does not have a degree that is trying to get into this field, that is in this field. So that seems to be a number that appears to be growing. So go to school. If you're in school, don't drop out unless you're making money. So let's go ahead. So learning how to code, online resources, videos, blogs, forums. So that's pretty cool because I have done that. I used to teach a lot more on YouTube and sort of gave that up, but that's how I even became a YouTuber. Was I was just teaching Python, and it's still a good opportunity. I recommend it. I mean, the best time to get into YouTube was probably 10 years ago, but maybe you can be the next TikTok developer or something. I don't really know, but it is interesting that you can see that most people are learning through the online resources that are given out there for free. Books are 54%. That's actually one of the reasons, or one of the big ways that I was able to learn. There wasn't really a whole lot of videos. The new Boston was like kind of doing his thing and blowing up at the time. And I was inspired by him. I thought he did a great job and was sad to see him leave YouTube. And it really sort of killed his channel. I think when you leave and you don't have any sort of routine schedule with YouTube, it just sort of falls apart. And then Google gives and takes away. So the YouTube thing is an impossible thing to master. I actually don't recommend to do it for money. But if you have a genuine interest in helping and teaching other people and making creative content, then go ahead and do it. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And then, so other, technical documentation, that would be like GitHub and stuff like that, Stack Overflow, online course platforms. So CodeHawk is not mentioned, sadly. I'm just kidding. I would have 0.0001% of this audience here, but Pluralsight, multi-billion-dollar company, Udemy, multi-billion. They stole tens of thousands from me at one point. Coursera, never really used them. And then, a lot of people talk about Code Academy. I'm a fan of Pluralsight. I think they do a pretty good job. But, yeah, anyway, these are all different opportunities that you have. One of the reasons why I didn't like Udemy is like they accept everybody, and they do have some really good content, but they also have some really bad content. I've thrown up some content that I really didn't put my best foot forward on, and it just is all accepted. But anyway, if you're trying to make money, I guess you could try to do it on any one of those platforms, but they never really worked out for me all that well. So here's the coding experience. So I'm in this mark of 10 to 14. I'm between these two. Almost 15 years, not 15 years yet, but if I round up, it's 15. But you can start seeing that, there's, dwindles down the longer you've been doing this. And hopefully if you save your money, you can actually retire pretty comfortably in this field. It's something that you may not want to get married. That's a piece of advice. Don't get married because most likely it'll end up in a divorce and you're going to be paying out a shitload of money. And that goes to either any gender. But that said, there is a lot of people that are just getting into the field. So, almost 50% here that are less than 10 years of experience. So, programming is still a new field, so that doesn't really surprise me. But it's you're competing with 50% of those developers are probably younger than you if you're over the age of 30. And as we get older, we have different interests in life, and we realize that time is dwindling, and we don't want to waste all of our time sitting in front of a computer screen. So save your money. Years coding professionally is a same thing. So 0 to 10. People burn out after that a lot, and I think that is actually some of the reason why there's a decline here. They just get into other things. And also just being that it's a new field and it's continually growing. So years of programming coding experience by developer type. So number one, senior executive. That, I guess, makes sense. You build your own startup. So then you get into product manager, engineering manager. Designer is a field that some people can get into. If you have good coding experience and being a designer, if you have that knack for artistic creativity, it's an easier job. And it's just it's probably something that you can bounce into. And then you have like project manager, where that is like knowing the business very well and being able to deliver business results. So none of this stuff is that interesting in my opinion. Number one job, developer full stack. So instead of just focusing on React, I've always said build projects. That means you're going to be dealing with the full stack, the back end, the front end, databases, and you can see those make up a lot of what we do here. So definitely full stack is my recommendation. Don't try to pigeonhole yourself into just one area. Some people will say front end's a nightmare, and it is. But if you know both front end and back end, it's just simply better. You can bounce around in the same role and not have to deal with the same thing day to day. And then also seeing the entire project come together where you're not just doing one piece of it, I think is awesome. So the top 10 countries, United States of America, number one. That doesn't really surprise me. I mean, if you look at all the top tech companies, most of the large major ones, a lot of the technical innovations when it comes to computer science and programming has come out of the United States. And I don't say that as like some sort of flag waving nationalist or anything like that. It's just simply as facts. But a lot of these other countries have definitely, started to emerge as being other developer shops. And then obviously there's a ton of over 1 billion people in India, and there's a lot of programmers from India. So that all said, I think, the one advantage of the United States of America is that you do have a much larger developer salary compared to some of these other countries. And some of these other countries, even though they have a lot of, like universal health care and stuff like that, the United States of America, we pay a lot for. I think when you do all the math, it still adds up to where the salaries in the United States are much higher than everywhere else. Or at least, mostly higher to the next country. But again, not trying to have some sort of debate on that. Just let me know your thoughts. All right, so here's the age, and this is where things get a little bit more hairy. For the developer that is over 45 years old, at that point, do you continue to code every single day? You can. You just have to make sure you stay up to date on things, and that you don't be the old curmudgeon or whatever that like tries to turn down every new way of doing something, because we always find better ways of doing things. Sometimes we reinvent the same old wheel, but I think a lot of these older developers, they move into management, and it sort of correlates a lot with the years of experience as well. But yeah, I mean, this could be an ageist community or an ageist industry, and competing with all the big-eyed new developers that have not been doing this as long can sometimes be a little bit daunting and frustrating and tiring. But you do what you have to do, and again, save your money. So here is gender. 91% is male. 95% of my audience on YouTube is male. Women programmers have been entering the market. They used to be big in the 50s and 60s or whatever, and I guess with the personal computer market in the late 70s, early 80s, that was considered more of like a boy toy type of thing, where everything was, I guess, much more gender focused or marketed to specific genders. And from what I understand, that's one of the big reasons why women sort of dropped out of that field. But now you see that they are emerging. And professionally speaking, I've worked with a pretty good split of male, female, and I don't want to get into the whole gender thing, but just male, female, non-binary, whatever. But the field has, I think, evened a lot more than this would show. So I don't really understand 92%. It seems to be much, much more split than that in the professional environments that I've worked in. And then also, just as a side shout out, which one of the best developers, I swear that the woman has like eagle eyes, like she can like spot anything, almost like a machine of like, can find like bugs and just it's unbelievable. But for anybody that's out there that thinks that like women can't code, it's simply not true. It's just a matter of I think of time, and we're going to see that that's much more of a split industry. So again, let's this type of stuff I guess is interesting for people, but I have no qualms, nothing to say on this. Okay, let's move on. Race, ethnicity, white, European. I'm not really sure what European is. What is European? Let's move on. Disability status, blind. I've never worked with a blind programmer before. Like hardly any respondents in that. Okay. ADHD. I mean, I guess, yeah. So I think everybody has anxiety to some degree. Like, I mean, I certainly have anxiety. I don't take anything for it. Mood, emotional disorders, example, depression. I've definitely suffered from depression at different times in my career and all that. And it does make it a lot harder to focus. And, again, don't get married. Technology, okay, let's see. Top languages where it says JavaScript, right? I mean, I think TypeScript is now surpassed that. I just did a top 10 language, so all this stuff sort of makes sense. SQL, structured query language, not really like a programming language. And if you're going to do a whole lot of, SQL is certainly important. It definitely is. So part of that full stack, like I said, database development. None of this stuff is all that interesting in my opinion. MySQL being number one, that's interesting. I think you can see MongoDB now has almost 30% of the market share. That's pretty cool. SQLite, like, are we really using that in production? Maybe we are. Postgres, I've used that with Django. It works hand in hand with Django very well. Redis is like a database caching service. MariaDB, big data. Elasticsearch, this is something that there's now a new name for Elasticsearch, I believe, in the AWS infrastructure. Forget what it's called. But yeah, I mean, searching across multiple databases and such. Okay, let's move on. Cloud platforms. AWS is number one by far, and I would agree with that. And then Azure, Google Cloud. I got involved in Google Cloud early on when it first came out. They used to call it the Google App Engine. And I just ran into issues where I would do a bad database read and then run out of all my resources and my budget. And like cloud hosting and these they make a lot of sense for business that's established, that wants to scale, have that elasticity and all that. Linode's down here at 4%, big sponsor of mine back in the day. They got bought for $1 billion. They were the largest privately held cloud hosting provider. They've saved me a ton of money. I'll always swear by their product. Well, maybe not always now that they have a new owner, but DigitalOcean, very similar to Linode. But that's, I think, where like the true entrepreneurial single developer needs to run their stuff with good enough support and cheap prices and ultimate freedom. Web frameworks and technologies, Node.js. React is not a it's not a framework really. I guess with Next.js or something like that, you might be able to call it that. jQuery still being mentioned. Some of this shit doesn't make any sense, honestly. jQuery is probably still around, for a lot of legacy stuff, but I don't know anybody that's using jQuery anymore. ASP. This is all just sort of a mix mash, but here's Django at 15%. That's pretty cool. And then Next.js. Everybody's talking about Next.js, like, just do Next.js, host on their infrastructure and all that, or whatever sort of plans they have. To me, it kind of reminds me of Meteor, which didn't really take off or go anywhere. And I don't want to do things that just locks me into their technology. Other frameworks and libraries, .NET, as if that's different from ASP.NET. What the hell is this? Anyway, let's keep moving. NPM, definitely big. Yarn, similar thing as NPM. NPM, we do all kinds of stuff in the development ecosystem these days, so it's a must to learn. From the config file, the package.json, to how we run our scripts and all that. Node modules, definitely NPM is worth learning. Docker for containers. I deal with Docker, definitely not an expert, but having this containerization where you can have a container, you share the containers across different environments, different operating systems, and it just works seamlessly, so that's the reason why we use it. Visual Studio Code being the #1 editor, Visual Studio being Microsoft's flagship product, which is specifically for .NET, IntelliJ for Java, which is by the JetBrains people, Notepad++, that's interesting, and then Vim, those are for the old school neckbeard admins. Android Studio, that's for Java, really Android development specifically, obviously. PyCharm, that would be also JetBrains project for Python development. And then where is WebStorm? WebStorm is something I've been using lately this year. So it's really a good product when it comes to like debugging TypeScript code, running unit tests and things with Jest, and just highlighting code issues. So JetBrains does a really good job making products. Here is Jira work management. So Jira and Confluence are owned by the same company. Trello, don't really use them personally. And then I'm surprised, like, yeah, Microsoft's not mentioned here. And there's Microsoft Planner, but like, where's like Azure DevOps stuff? I don't really know. Anyway, that's interesting. So Slack is what I'm using lately. I've used it in previous companies as well. Microsoft Teams, I use that as in my previous employer. I like Slack better. I think it just has better emojis and better integration tools. Zoom is obviously the way that we meet online. Cisco WebEx Teams, I've also used that as well. So I think that there's hardly any difference between WebEx Teams and Zoom, but Zoom is more widely used, obviously. So personal use Windows, that's actually why I still use it as well, just for the wide support of software. And then Linux subsystem for Windows, that's something that's good if you're doing Windows development and you have server-side code that runs on a Linux operating system. So the most loved languages: Rust, Elixir, Clojure, TypeScript, Julia, Python. And then who is the most hated? I would imagine Perl is somewhere down here. No, PHP is pretty much hated. So #1 dreaded is MATLAB, which I've never used. Cobalt. I had a neighbor that was a Cobalt consultant, retired, came out of retirement. Dude had like a $2.5–3 million house. So I always was interested in that, but he's considered one of those Cobalt cowboys. But here's Perl, dreaded. PHP, a lot of people love PHP. It gets the job done, I understand, but it's an awful language. Yeah, none of this stuff is all that surprising. Databases, Postgres is the most loved. Redis, but Redis seems a little bit not in the same category as Postgres, but for like caching and things like that. MongoDB is probably my favorite these days. I use MongoDB for my website. And yeah, IBM Watson. Yeah, that was a garbage product from the jump. I knew it. I remember some IBM consultants came in one time and talked to us in like 2011. And I was like, this is right after the Jeopardy thing. And I was just like, if this thing can search so well and it knows what you're talking about so well, then why is it not competing with Google? Like, why doesn't it have a search engine that can compete with Google? And, you know, Google has massive data, and I suppose that was the reason why IBM gave the excuse of like, oh, we just don't have the data access or whatever. But the fact of the matter is like, I just knew that artificial intelligence was bullshit back then. And there's definitely been some major improvements, but even with like self-driving cars and Tesla running over like children and mannequins and things like that, we're just, you know, we're far away from where people want to be or where people might think that we are when it comes to AI. I'm looking for more awesome like general intelligence type stuff, like that Google developer that came out and was like talking about this thing has a conscience and it, you know, it says that it believes in God or this or that, and it's like, no, it's just regurgitating responses that it found on the internet, nothing more. Um, it's pretty much every chat engine that we've seen. You can confuse them very quickly. Although I will admit that we're gonna have to reevaluate, like, you know, the Turing Turing completeness or the Turing machine or whatever. Like Alan Turing's thing, where like, you know, the idea was that you could have either a computer or a person on the opposite room of you, and you don't know if it's a computer or a person. If you can't figure out that it's a computer, then programming and machines can become smarter than humans and trick humans and all that. But we're doing that well, I think, with natural language processing, but it's still just simply regurgitating based on just trial and error efforts and just massive iterations and lambda calculus and all that, or just calculus in general. But the point being, though, I think that we don't really have a true general intelligence yet. Everything's very supervised. Like most of the advanced things that we've seen are in a supervised type environment. So I'm looking for the major wow moments of, wow, we have actual unsupervised general intelligence learning, and then I will be like, holy shit. Even something like GitHub Copilot, I barely use it. It is nice to autofill, and it's better than most anything I've, you know, it's definitely better than any sort of IntelliCode or anything that I've ever seen. But it still doesn't write the code for you, and it's probably has copyright issues as well. Who knows? So Docker and Kubernetes kind of run in the same field here. IDE. So we've already kind of gone into this. I don't really work with a lot of that. So you can see everybody loves Slack. So you can see web development technologies kind of dominate this between TypeScript, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. That's dominating where most of the jobs are. So learning those core technologies, databases, we're seeing the same thing. And Next.js is definitely gaining more and more popularity. Next.js technically uses Node, so I don't really, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, this thing. So top paying technologies, Clojure, Erlang, F#, but all these salaries are low. So this must be worldwide, because all of these salaries are very low for the United States. So it's just like a garbage stat there. You see the increase in COBOL. There's still just legacy code that nobody knows how to deal with. Like some of the stuff, like Crystal has no adoption whatsoever. And pretty much all of these languages have increases from the 2022, and that's part of the Great Resignation. So a lot of people left their jobs, myself included, to make more money, because there was just, everybody was leaving, and it was a Great Resignation. So Git obviously is dominating. Git, no matter where you are, if you're on, I used to use TFS, Team Foundation Server, and that thing would go down all the time, so nobody would be able to write their code. So the server had to be up all the time in order for everything to work. And Git, simply, you could work on it on an airplane with no internet connection, and then, you know, as soon as you have an internet connection, start merging things in and rebasing, grabbing the latest, all that stuff. So GitHub is a great place, I think, actually, to maintain your code. Azure repos have also worked in that. And then here's blockchain, right? So I've been a little unsure of it, so I wouldn't say unfavorable. I would just say indifferent. So I'm in the indifferent category when it comes to this. But you can see it's pretty much split. All right, and then for us programmers, full-time employment or student full-time, only 15% are independent contractor, freelancer, or self-employed. And then there's hardly any part-time developers. So we're mostly full-time. And this is similar across all these different countries here. And when I went up to the salaries, did they have, oh shit, what's going on? This thing's freaking out. That's what happens when you have too much JavaScript going on your page here. You get some weird results like that. So yeah, I was trying to see if the salaries actually had a country, and they don't. All right, so now, oh wait, here's salary. Okay. So a C-suite executive is only making 100, and well, I guess that's across the world. But here, yeah, United States 200,000, engineering manager 180,000. I mean, it really just depends. Yeah, it really just depends. So Canada, blockchain developers making bank. All these salaries are attainable just through a senior engineering role. Even the 200 plus is a senior engineering role. Okay. %8 of professional developers code outside of work. And yeah, I mean, I coded as a hobby before I had a job. I still have hobby projects, even when I had a job. Even after 15 years, I still have hobby projects. So I don't do freelancing or contract work. And as far as contributing to open source projects, I mean, I've done a little bit of that, not really. Bootstrapping a business, I've done that. And then 12% don't code outside of work. And that's probably smart, you know, because that's how you prevent burnout. You can really waste a lot of time and effort trying to do some sort of business idea thinking it'll take off. But most of us programmers, I do find, are entrepreneurial. So even if they don't actually start a business, they have some hobby project that probably there's some idea that they could eventually turn it into a business. Actually, starting a business does take some pretty good effort. I should talk about that more on my programming channel here. But okay, so Stack Overflow. I noticed they don't use... Yeah, I don't really know what that is. So yeah, I probably visit multiple times a day. I think I'm in that category. I do have an account. My score is like 11,000 something. I don't contribute though. So I don't upvote hardly, and I don't contribute answers anymore because I just don't like the race to try to answer the question and then have people like nitpick my stuff. I just don't find that it's my 11,000 score is literally from effort years ago. Do I feel like I'm part of the community? I would be in the somewhat category because I did contribute enough to where I'm like, yeah, you know, I got 11,000. All right. Well, anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this video up. This thing has gone on a long time, but this was kind of fun. If anybody's still watching, let me know. I need some more people to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I know I haven't been answering comments all that much. I've been really busy, but help a brother out, please. All right, guys. Everybody, have a good night. Take care. Bye. If you're learning to code, I recommend you check out my website, codehawk.com. My courses are fast, to the point, without the fluff that you'll find on other competitor sites like Pluralsight and Udemy. One of the reasons why you'll want to learn with me is that I'm a self-taught engineer myself. I never went to school for any of this stuff. I've been doing it for over a decade now professionally. The biggest reason you should use CodeHawk is that it's one price for everything. I try to make this as affordable as possible. Instead of having to purchase 15 to 20 different courses on Udemy or an expensive monthly subscription to Pluralsight, it's one price for everything on CodeHawk. Front end, back end, full stack. It has courses on all the latest web development technology. The courses range from beginner to advanced. So if you want to learn the latest web technology, give CodeHawk a look. There's demos for all of the courses that are out there right now. In addition, there's also my personal vlogs, which I'll be adding more to. So content that I don't release to YouTube is available on CodeHawk.